Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from Fore Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning. Welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, we're going back to real estate-related events.
Okay.
This year. You probably got more information than you need.
I got lots of things, lots of resources to learn from this year.
School's out. We're into the summer season, but this unprecedented real estate market that we're in, that we've been in since 2020, has not let up.
Nope.
As a matter of fact, 2021, it's really amped up. You read about it anywhere you want. Low inventory, low interest rates, high demand. And now that we're on the other side, seemingly, of the pandemic and restrictions, we're hoping that it will increase inventory. But so far, I've not seen it. I've been in this business 21 years, and I have never seen anything like this. And my main guest today is Laura Kurtz, who is a lender that I've worked with quite a bit over the years. And she's being joined with me by Fore Properties real estate broker, Asia Riesberg. Laura, have you seen anything like this market? Because what happens to us happens to you, happens to Asia. We're all in the same boat.
No, I've been in the business since 1994 and have never seen this situation with low inventory and the subsequent appraisal issues.
Right. Asia, when you moved here, she bought a home from Colorado Springs. She did it. We had never met. And it was a multiple offer situation. And we kind of thought, oh my gosh, this is a little unusual. This was in the spring of 2020, right?
It was January.
January of 2020. Mm-hmm. And so there were 3 offers on this property, and yours was the last and the 4th. And do you remember our phone conversation before you guys put your offer in, what we had advised you to do?
Yes.
You just don't want to reveal it. Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, just we had to go over the ask price, which at the time seemed like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it did. But it wasn't a lot over the ask price, and I felt like you knew.
Yeah.
Had a good feel for, where we were going.
Laura, we asked her to go $3,000 over the list price.
Yeah.
And I thought she might think, oh my gosh, he's not doing a good job. He's just telling me to offer more. But today, if she were to offer $3,000 over list price, she would probably be in last place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she wouldn't get the contract.
No.
No way.
No.
And
I feel really thankful that we bought when we did.
Could you have imagined if at the time we asked you to offer $3,000 more and waive the right to an appraisal negotiation, whereby if there was a shortage on the value, you would have to pick up the difference. Mm-hmm. You may have hung up on me, but today, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's just par for the course right now.
Yeah. When she was moving here, she also had a condo in Fayetteville that she was trying to sell, and she'd been working with, I guess, a broker over there. Mm-hmm. And you were doing everything from a distance, which a lot of buyers are doing today. And your buyer, they kept dragging on the closing, and nothing was seeming to get done.
Yeah.
It wound up being a lot to do with the lender and the financing.
It did, yeah. And it happened to be the same lender we were using.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Which we had a little trouble with too, but it just fell through. It fell through. We missed the first closing date, and then second time around we gave them an extension, and it fell through again, and so we had to start from scratch.
So, I guess the question I have to ask you and indirectly to Laura is: did the client have a pre-qualification letter?
Yes.
Or did she have a pre-approval letter, and what the difference is?
She had a pre-approval letter, and so we took that at face value as, that this would happen.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't.
Laura, what's the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval letter? Because I think the public gets confused.
Excuse me. There's actually 3 different letters. So the pre-qualification letter is simply where a loan officer has pulled credit reviewed credit from a loan officer perspective, evaluated the income that was reported by the buyer, not documentation,
Right.
and the assets, had the conversation. Do you have the money for a down payment?
Okay.
That's a pre-qualification letter.
Okay.
Pre-approval letter is when you have the documentation. So a loan officer has looked at pay stubs, looked at banking asset, we call it asset documentation, and reviewed the credit, and then furthermore ran the automated underwriting system, which is just an algorithm we ask the computer to do and to state whether or not the loan is acceptable. We call it accept or approve in the system, which doesn't mean the loan's going to happen, but it takes away a lot of the guesswork. And that letter should normally say that there's been AUS or approval is what you'll see on the letter. That way you know farther steps have been taken and we see the documentation. It's not just what a buyer says that they make, which they can be they can be wrong a lot. They don't know how we evaluate qualifying income. They know how they see their income. So if you have a loan officer that's not asking the deep questions, you're not going to get the right answers. And there's a third one, letter that after a file goes through underwriting, we can produce another letter that says this has been through underwriting with conditions, but then you know there should not be any surprises.
And what do you call that letter?
It depends on the company, but typically that's called a pre-approval after underwriting letter.
I'll call that a pre-approval letter on steroids.
Yes. Most companies have a proprietary name for
So-
that particular letter.
So in a perfect world, when we forward a buyer to you to get pre-qualified, we don't want just a pre-qualification letter. We want you to be able to put together a pre-approval letter.
Yes.
There are times when you say, Bill, I can't do it yet. We're doing one or two things before I issue this letter. I just want to make sure that when I issue it, it's like gold instead of rushing it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's because of the additional documentation.
Exactly. And most of the time, excuse me, what I send to you is a pre-qual letter,
Right.
a pre-qualification letter, but that goes back to using a lender that's trusted. And you don't come across very many listing agents that have issues seeing my name. They know the loan's going to close.
Right.
Even in this market, I haven't had to issue one single pre-approval letter, but it's going to happen. It'll happen any day. But I look at the documentation.
Yeah.
If they're not a job with an absolute income like military, that's easy to do actually because it's set
Guaranteed.
in stone. But if they're a regular employee somewhere, I want pay stubs before I even do a pre-qualification letter. And I'd rather people wait and do it right so that when you see my name on something, we know we have a loan.
Yeah.
But not everyone's like that. So
Yeah.
you can't trust every letter that's out there.
You look like you wanted to say something.
No, I mean, that makes perfect sense because we couldn't trust the pre-approval letter that we had with our first buyer.
Right. You know, in this market, lenders have become so important, local lenders. Have been involved in a lot of multiple offer situations as a listing broker. And then we sit down with the seller and we put a grid together. The grid features all the salient points of the offers side by side so the seller can compare apples with apples. 5 years ago, this would never have happened. But today, it's very important. Who's the lender? Do we know who the lender is?
Right.
Is the lender local? Is the lender from Montana? 1-800-LOANS-ARE-US. We try to qualify. And so when Laura's name appears as the lender, that actually resonates with the seller. It resonates with me as a listing agent. And I can then say, no, I know her. I've worked with her. I don't know Joe Schmo from Montana.
Right.
And that's when we try to, it gives a buyer an advantage in a multiple offer situation to work with a local lender.
Is that common knowledge because the pre-approval letter that we got was from the same lender we were using, which is a very well-known national
Okay.
lender.
Okay.
And so is that common knowledge among brokers that a local lender is actually a better bet?
It's common knowledge amongst, I think, very experienced brokers.
Seasoned people.
If you're in a situation where we have a VA a home that will attract a VA buyer, we've had a situation where we had a home with 8 offers. They were all VA loans. One of them was 90% financing. The rest of them was all 100%. Who the lender was made a huge difference to the seller.
Right.
Because especially with the VA loan, there are companies that are not here that do VA loans and that have national reputations. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they get the food out of the kitchen on time.
Right.
You never use that expression, did you? Getting the food out of the kitchen? No.
I will now.
Huh? You will now, right?
Is that a New York expression?
I don't know. It's,
That's a Bill.
yeah, that's one of my expressions. Thank God for analogies, or I would have a very weak vocabulary. But Laura, it's funny in this market, the people that need the loans the most, especially the VA buyers, are the ones that have been hurt the most by the high demand for homes. So somebody doing a VA loan, even though they're fully qualified and they're financing 100%, which is their right and they're entitled to, it doesn't put them in the most advantageous situation this year. That's where it's so different for you.
And I believe that's misinformation out in the market, because a VA appraisal right now is the best and easiest one to get. It's the best and easiest one to dispute. You get a heads up that the appraiser is having trouble coming up with value. So everyone in the transaction, the buyer's side and the seller side, both have the responsibility and the right to provide information to the appraiser before that value is established, to consider additional comps that maybe the appraiser hadn't thought of, because there's a lot out there. They have to narrow it down just like we do. And so if the appraisal comes in short, you've got advocates out there wanting that appraisal to come in higher, including the veteran. So with the veteran's permission, the lender's trying to get the value to be correct, number one, but oftentimes it can go higher and still be correct. And then the appraiser, they want it to work. And if that doesn't work, VA will advocate as well. So VA understands that the veteran is in adverse position, considering the appraisal came in short, and they're going to have to pay more money and not be able to borrow as much.
Right.
So VA, if they can find the value in the property, because they have a whole appraisal department, they're going to find the value. Conventional loans don't work like that. It's actually worse for appraisals on conventional loans.
See, now, I think most brokers would think just the opposite.
Right.
Exactly. The assumption is the opposite.
That a conventional loan is a better vehicle than...
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And they're very difficult to go back and dispute an appraisal because the appraiser's in charge instead of VA.
Okay, so I'll take the other side of the coin. Most brokers will instruct their sellers that a VA loan puts more stringent requirements on the condition of the home, where the VA appraiser can come in addition to doing a valuation on the home, they kind of do a pseudo home inspection report. If they cite anything that they see that needs to be addressed and fixed, that has to be done as a condition of the loan, not something that the buyer and seller can negotiate. And that's what I think is being presented to the public these days.
I think so, but now conventional appraisals are just as particular with very, very small differences. The most thing you'll see, or the most common thing that you'll see VA versus conventional, is you'll need hand railings on staircases, which can be which can just be slapped up on there with 2x4s.
Right.
Or you'll see sometimes smoky windows or frosty windows.
Yep.
Or which that's usually only an issue if you have to order a window. But other than that, the major cost items I hardly ever see. I mean, we're talking maybe once every 5 years. It's not common.
Yeah.
And conventional appraisals can have the same requirements, especially in our markets. Our markets, the same appraisers do the same types of appraisals. So there's the muddy waters, the gray areas.
So the appraisal shortfalls that you were just talking about, there's a procedure with the VA known as Tidewater.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit?
Yes, Tidewater is where it begins. So if an appraiser, when they do their research, hopefully they've gone and done the inspection on the property, and then they pull their comps and their data from all the different systems that they go to. If they see they're having trouble coming up with value, they put the lender on notice. And from that moment that they tell the lender, not when the lender tells anyone else, but when they tell the lender, hey, I'm having trouble coming up with value, I'm calling Tidewater notice. 48 hours from that moment, all parties, which is the listing side and the selling side.
That's right.
They can provide comps in grid format. Really important. Just CMAs. It's really what
They give us a grid to fill out.
Yeah, and you can even just do a CMA. It's,
Yep.
it's that simple.
Yep.
And we provide that to the appraiser within 48 hours. I usually tell everyone 36, so
Right.
that way I get it in time. There's a little bit of a cushion.
Right.
Provide that to the appraiser. More than half the time they come in with value. More than half the time. But it could still come in short. So if it comes in short after that,
Yeah.
there's another procedure.
We had a situation 2 weeks ago. Had a VA buyer. He bid on a home. It was a multiple offer situation. The home was listed for $349. Because of the multiple offer situation, he went under contract at $360. The appraiser came in, did the appraisal, and the lender was notified there was a discrepancy or there was a shortage. And I got, as the buyer agent, and Rachel Hernandez as the listing agent, we both got the same form to fill out a CMA, as Laura said.
Right.
We did. We put our best comps together. I authored a cover letter to do the best I could to defend the value. And I knew who the appraiser was. But you don't want to put him in a corner and make him feel dead wrong. You just want to say, hey, would you consider these?
Right.
So we didn't know what his value was. We only know what the final value came in at. The final value came in at $8,000 short of the list price,
Yeah.
but $3,000 more than the price the listing agent had originally suggested they listed for. Okay. But because of this crazy market, my buyer, who's a first-time buyer, signed an appraisal waiver,
Yeah.
which means he has to come up with that additional $8,000 out of pocket
Right.
to close, which he's decided to do because the inventory is so bad.
Yeah.
So it happens. It happens both ways. But a good broker, a good real estate broker, and you know this because you have a good vantage point. Our job is to cover every eventuality that could happen, right?
Yes.
You paint the whole landscape so that they're not surprised if there's a hiccup or there's bad news. Because there's not bad news, there's just news.
Right.
But it all depends on how it's expressed and how it's laid out so that we help manage their expectations.
Yeah, we call it setting expectations in our world.
And you have to do that all the time.
Constantly.
Right? We're going to come back in the second set. There are lots of issues going on in our market, and we want to talk with you to get your perspective. Our guest is Laura Kurtz. She is a valued local lender, and I'm also being joined by Fore Properties real estate broker Asia Riesberg. We'll be right back.
They're bad. They get really good rates sometimes. Like really good. It's enticing.
I hope you're taping this, Dorothy. We'll just start the second set. No, it's fine. It's perfectly good. We're
names.
speaking with local lender Laura Kurtz. In the first set, we talked about why it's so important to pick a local lender, and it's as important sometimes as framing the offer that you're going to make on a home. Backlogs are very prevalent right now. The market is so heated up that there are delays in every step through the process. The relationship between the lender and the attorney is an integral part of the relationship to guarantee a seamless or smoother closing than normal. When you're working with a lender that is not in the area, that maybe has no affiliation with any of the local attorneys, it's a learning curve. And if you're on a 45-day or 60-day schedule, it can cause agita. One of the, for my money, one of the best paralegals in the area is Cammie David at Thigpen and Jenkins. I've known Cammie for probably the better part of about 17 or 18 years. She's been there that long. She is the chalk. I mean, she's great.
She's perfect.
And you guys have a superb relationship. And I know many times when I've copied Cammie on a contract that's come in, I've also copied you. So I put you guys together, but it's a no-brainer because it's a happy union as opposed to, hey, you're going to meet for the first time. So Cammie is a little outspoken. She's very straightforward, very honest. She made a Facebook post the other day, and I'm going to read it verbatim, and I got permission from her to do so. And I looked at this, and I thought, oh, my gosh. Well, what I liked was some of the top brokers in town looked at the quote, and they also liked it. Here's what she said. Who you pick as your mortgage lender matters. If you are on my friends list, ask me before you pick what sounds like the best deal from some internet lender. I receive a lot of ridiculous requests from lenders daily, but, quote unquote, we need a 30-year chain of title before we can release the loan package to you, unquote. Tops the list right now. The post in question involved a closing scheduled for the other day, and of course it did not close, even though the lender had everything they needed weeks ago. And the sole reason is that they are some blankety-blank internet lender asking for items that are not necessary at the very last second as well. Who has ever heard of a 30-year chain of title? The standard is 2 years. She doesn't hold back, does she, Cammie?
No, and she knows what she's doing.
Right.
And that was my past life, was doing her job. I did that for 13 years.
Right.
And the reason that they don't need a 30-year chain of title is because the title insurance covers them for 40.
Okay.
So there's no need for a chain of title for a lender at all. There's no purpose in it.
Why is the relationship with the attorney so important to the borrower? Why does a borrower need to understand that relationship?
Because if the attorney does their job even appropriately, they don't even have to do a stellar job, just an appropriate, normal service level job, all the pieces fall together like they will. They are the last touch. They pull all of the parties together into one succinct transaction moment, and they coordinate everything, really. It's harder than what I do as a lender. It's harder than what you do as a broker, because they are having to put all of the pieces together, all the personalities together, all the checks and balances, and keep all these different personality types straight and know who has what idiosyncrasies or processes or requirements. And they need to memorize that to be efficient. And so a good one is going to know how to make it all go together. And a bad one, you won't have a closing on time. It just won't happen.
Is it true that all these lenders that are out there, because there's so many, do they all have different requirements of the attorney? Because the lenders are always trying to say, hey, we can't, we haven't gotten the title work from the attorney yet. And there always seems to be like passing the buck as we're up against.
In my experience, again, since 1994,
Yeah.
do the math, that's a long time. It's most of the time a matter of interpreting the rules is the difference, not the actual rules themselves. So there's probably 5% of the rules that can be different from lender to lender, just based on their own overlays or their own experiences with issues. But most of the time, it's the person in the job doesn't understand what the rule is or how they are supposed to affect that rule.
Right.
Asia, when we put a contract in for a buyer, I become like paranoid that I haven't covered every eventuality that could possibly go wrong. Today, it used to be you could put a 45-day or even a 60-day closing.
Yeah.
But with the backups that are going on today, it's unrealistic. And buyers want They identify a home, they want to purchase and possess it, and so we have to sort of push them back a little bit. And then they always will ask this question after the contract goes in. Okay, what do I need to do now?
Right.
Okay. My answer is always the same. You need to do, in the next 10 days, everything that the lender asks of you, and don't even second guess it. Just provide them with all the documentation. We'll take care of the inspections. We'll take care of those logistics. But you need to do everything they say, and it's not a democracy.
Right.
So the file gets expedited. The appraisal can get ordered, but the appraisal takes forever these days.
Especially here in Moore County, there's a shortage of appraisers. There's not very many here, which is the biggest problem.
I wonder why that is. And is it the same in Fayetteville? I don't think so.
No, it's just a bigger area. We're a smaller area here.
And do you find the delays are more with the VA appraisers or more with the conventional? Or
I find it more with conventional. VA, they have a specific timeline they're supposed to. They have a service agreement with VA that sometimes keeps them within those boundaries. Not always.
Mm-hmm. And then the possibility of appraisal shortfalls throws another wrench, a monkey wrench, because it sets things back a couple of weeks. It can. It set things back 1 week on the situation I cited in the first set where there was an $8,000 shortfall. They're still going to close, but they moved it back about a week or so. So brokers should be paying very close attention to their due diligence dates and their closing dates, primarily because of the delay in appraisals.
Yes, and can you say that one more time, please?
So I made a good point there.
Yes, I'm still getting 25-day contracts from when they were signed, and I'm getting about 19, 20 days to work a file, which is impossible.
So in today's environment, if they're doing a loan, conventional or VA, are you looking more at a 40, 45-day due diligence period and a 60 to 75-day?
I'm delighted with a 30-day due diligence period and a 45-day closing, and we'll probably close it at 30 days.
Oh.
We can control everything except the appraisal.
Except the appraisal.
Most lenders, if you're dealing with a reputable lender that you trust, their processes, even though they're slowed down a little bit right now because of all the hassles involved with the appraisals and the initial contract negotiations, it is holding things up a little bit, but I haven't seen that change our turn times, and I haven't heard our competitors having issues with that. The appraisal piece is the critical piece.
Okay.
They're taking forever.
So walk us through the beginning stages. Asia puts a contract together. It's ratified, signed by both parties. She sends it to the closing attorney. She sends it to you. You take that contract, and you need that contract to start the process. Why?
Because that's what legitimizes that official application from a lending perspective. That means we have a true application, not just a pre-qualification or a pre-approval application.
And that triggers a time you can lock in a rate.
Yes, we can lock in the rate.
So how about people that say to you before they have a contract, I spoke to lender ABC, and I got a rate of 2.85. How can that be? They didn't get a rate. They got a
quote.
You can't have a rate locked in until you have a contract.
Right. And you have a lot of lenders out there giving a lower rate that can't be honored because they want to tease the people into using them. And it's hard to differentiate that between the different lenders when you're a borrower that isn't familiar with how the process works, which again goes back to working with a reputable lender that your other service providers are recommending.
I love working with first-time buyers. I consider it a privilege because I always think that people, when they buy their first property, they'll remember that transaction the rest of their lives, and it serves as a basis for every other experience that they have. And I really like working with Laura with first-time buyers because she is a coach and a consultant and a mentor, and she sees the whole playing field. Sometimes people... And there's so much competition. But you've been doing this for how long? How many years?
In lending, this will be my 15th year.
So that experience and that perspective that you have is crazy important.
Oh, yes.
It's not that you're someone that can be accessed online and you can have an email interaction where they throw a rate at you, but none of it's done. But having the ability to sit down and talk with a first-time buyer is also a privilege for you, isn't it?
I love it. I love being able to help people understand the process and having, just from the beginning of the conversation, sensing their anxiety and stress. And
Right.
by a few sentences in, you can tell they just feel reassured that they have an advisor, not someone that's just trying to earn money.
Right.
They have an advocate, a guide
Right.
Yeah.
for the process.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. We're not trying to. You're not trying to sell something. You're trying to inform, and then they can make an educated decision.
Exactly.
To go forward, and then we're also trying to give them the best advice so that they're with the people that are serving their interest the best, not just
Right.
trying to sell something.
Exactly.
Bill, do you find that buyers are receptive to that information, that they'll go with a local lender versus a big national name?
Yes. So some buyers are, and some buyers are not. And I can't legislate other people's decisions. I can't do it. I
No.
can do my best to give them the best information.
Right.
The people that go their own way because they think they're going to save nickels and dimes, more often than not are sorry. They don't learn the lesson until they look back in hindsight.
Yeah.
Those that have the faith and that understand that we're trying to do what's in their best interest and go forward are usually rewarded, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
It's tough. So how do you advise people if you don't have a lot of experience, right? If you have a gravitas of experience and you can say it, and you don't have to worry what people think because you're not questioning your credibility. You're telling them exactly what you believe is in their best interest.
Right.
You've had lots of experience in other industries besides real estate.
Right.
So you understand how to communicate and how to get to the bottom line for people. And if they accept, great. If they don't,
Right. Yeah.
all we can do, right? And you have to have a thick skin, Laura, don't you, in this business?
A very thick skin.
You wind up talking with a lot of people, and you can pretty much tell within the first 10-minute phone call where they're coming from and how, because you have to have a different discussion with every single client.
Yes.
You cannot have a standard.
No.
Right. Okay. You want to get into that or no? Not probably today.
I don't even know how to describe it. I just know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter. The most important thing is not just listening to what they're saying, but feeling what they're saying. And that's hard to do. I think there's a lot of loan officers and brokers that can't or don't know how to do that for a client. And I think that's the most important thing to do, because if we can meet their needs,
Yeah.
we can make them happy, and we'll all have more business while making people happy.
Asia,
is
somebody
my
once
preferred.
told me that the most successful lender is the one that knows how to ask the right questions
Right.
during the application process
Yeah.
and not let things fall by the wayside that would come back and surface later.
Oh, yeah.
And a big national lender isn't even talking to you. You're submitting information online. You never have a voice on the other end of the phone.
No, and they need to be able to hear just the subtle nuances.
Right.
On, this will be our last home before we retire for the military. Okay, when are you retiring?
Right.
Because that matters.
Right.
Are you retiring in 60 days? That's a problem.
Right.
You have to pay attention to the details.
Let's come back in the third set. Our guest is Laura Kurtz, terrific lender, great lady here in Moore County. We'll be right back.
The insurance can be way wrong. Insurance can be way wrong.
And insurance can be way wrong.
I
Attorney
lose
fees
loans
can be
because of
way wrong.
insurance.
Huh?
I lose loans because of insurance. Because I quote what I see as the norm, and another lender will charge significantly less as if they're the ones
Yeah.
determining it, and they'll go there based on insurance.
Wouldn't a buyer get a quote for their insurance?
You would think, and I
typically?
guide them. Look, your insurance is going to depend on which provider you
Right.
choose. They just see the bottom line.
So we're back, but I don't want to interrupt you. No. So we're talking about when a buyer is assessing their estimated closing costs, right? Sometimes you might present them with, or some lenders will present them with the rosiest picture to hook them in,
Yes,
but you don't do that.
absolutely not.
So what do you do?
I do what I think is going to be on the high side of reasonable.
Okay.
I don't overestimate to an extreme, but I try to build in a way for the buyer to prepare properly for closing,
Okay.
their expectation of how much money they need to bring.
Right.
And so that way they don't have an unexpected increase at closing right at the last moment when they've already planned to do other things with their expendable money.
So there, to me, in my world, I see two types of lenders. One lender will underpromise and overdeliver, which I like. The other lender will overpromise and underdeliver.
Right.
And at the time they underdeliver, it's too late.
Right. And the buyer doesn't learn until the
It's too late.
under-delivering moment is occurring. And so at the point of decision,
Right. It's at the beginning.
yes, and if the borrower is simply looking at the bottom line total and not evaluating the details or evaluating the source of how they got to that lender, was it a referral from a trusted source, then you're really not comparing apples to apples.
Right.
Because it's very easy to adjust those numbers to look better than another lender as far as the bottom line is concerned. It's very easy.
Would you agree that most buyers make their decision solely on the interest rate that they're quoted?
No, I would say half. do.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Most of them, they make their decision based on how they feel when they're talking with you. If they have a feeling that they can trust you and that you're there to guide them.
Yeah.
Right.
I would
Right.
say it's about 50-50. They want a fair rate. They want to know they're getting a fair rate. But I think only half are solely rate focused.
Yeah. Moore County is in a such a strong position these days that you probably have wound up speaking to more people from afar who are
Yes.
doing a loan here that are not even in Moore County, who have not even seen the home.
Yeah.
You just did one for a couple in Germany,
Yes.
two dentists who moved here from Germany. You still haven't met them.
No, I have clients I've done 3 and 4 loans for that I've never met them.
But with Nisha and Steve, I mean, you got a really good feeling about them
Yes.
through your long conversations and emails. I mean, here
Yes.
they were in Europe
Yeah.
being transferred here, and they moved not too far from where I live, and they were completely delighted. They had no surprises.
No.
And I don't think they had the constitution for any. Because
And a
with all the pressure that they had.
move, right? Was it a military move?
Yes.
And
With 2
and
active
overseas.
duty. They're both active duty.
which is so stressful in
Yeah.
itself.
Right.
So the more stress you can take out of it.
And I think working with the local lender to that point, I'm from a military family and I was married to someone in the military. So I've lived that as the oldest of 4 girls. So I had a lot of responsibility there. So I can empathize very well with the people in that situation. And many local lenders are like me. I'd like to say I'm super unique, but there are many lenders that have that experience.
Yeah.
It makes it easier than the people on the phone in
100%.
Timbuktu somewhere.
Even they're a so-called military-friendly lender.
That they don't have any idea what
Right.
it's like. It's very stressful on a family.
It's so stressful. Yeah.
And buying a house is stressful under the best of
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah. Add into that moving overseas and
Really need people with empathy
Yeah.
helping you.
And imagine we're talking to clients sometimes that we haven't met
Right.
who are overseas or somewhere else in the country. So they have to buy into us
Right.
and then buy into our recommendations because we're the point of first contact where we create all the referrals on the what I call the wheel, and we are like the axis. And so our referrals are very, very important.
Right.
So it's a rare situation, but it's a happy situation when we
Yes.
can work together as a team. What happens when you get a client who has first-time buyer, let's say, or not even a first-time buyer, credit issues. There are a few times where we've sent you clients and you've gotten back to me and said, Bill, they're 6 to 12 months away and they have some things I have to work out, right? You don't just say thank you, but see it hit the road. You kind of help them, you coach them, you counsel them, you give them a specific roadmap.
Yes.
And there are misconceptions about because there are lenders who will say, "Oh, if you have a 500 credit score, we have a loan for you," or 600.
It's usually a pretty bad experience for the borrower.
And a high interest, right? So some people are not ready,
Right.
but not every lender does the credit counseling.
Right.
What do you tell a buyer when if they're shopping lenders, right? And they have their credit pulled 2 or 3 times. Is that going to affect their credit score? If they're
Not if they do it within a very short period of time and it's only for a mortgage,
Only
rather than also trying to apply for other types of credit.
So does it matter how many?
Not really.
Okay, as long as it's for a mortgage and it's within a time period. Do you know what that time period is?
No. And
Okay.
the credit bureaus don't publish that. We have reason to believe it's about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that's our reasonable assumption.
And when a real estate broker is asked the question, I hate the question, but we get asked all the time, what are rates today? What do they look like?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm kind of forced to say, that's a lender question, and a lot of it is credit score driven.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of my response.
Yep, and loan type, credit score, and loan to value.
Yeah, all of those things factor in. It's not just what people read on the internet.
Right, which sounds like noise to a borrower. They get overwhelmed if you say the jargon. If you use the jargon, they think, oh, now I have to go research. And then they get nervous.
So the process of interviewing a buyer to purchase a home and to do a loan, if it can be an organic process where everything gets slowed down and there's not too much information coming in from various, you get a potential for a more quality driven relationship.
Yes, the internet is just full of misinformation and so many teasers and advertisements that come across as legitimate information.
Yep.
It confuses borrowers and really sets them off to the wrong path to get true, proper guidance.
A couple of weeks ago, I got this thing in my head that I was going to buy a massage chair, and so I did. So I said, okay, I'm going to go online and do some reading. So the learning curve took me 3 weeks. The amount of reading I had to do, oh my God, the differences. I had such a headache. I mean, I literally needed some Advil. And I tried to understand and intellectualize everything. It was impossible.
Yeah.
I wanted someone to talk to me
Yeah.
and tell me what I should be looking for and not to self-learn it.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that I found that. And there's a YouTube video for everything.
Yes.
Oh, my God. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
I think about that I think of people shopping for loans. And some buyers have preconceived notions already, not just for property, because they'll go on to Zillow or
Yes.
whatever, and they know what they want.
Yeah.
And they might have preconceived notions, Laura, coming in to talk to you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it
Oh,
just
yes.
confuses things.
Well, and we don't have salespeople in this world like we used to. We used to go to a shoe store, and the
Right.
salesman took care of everything. You
Right.
just sat in the chair waiting for him to show up.
Right.
And
he
mortgages,
was the expert, and you.
correct. You trusted him. You
agreed to that.
You walked out with your new shoes on and your old shoes in the box.
Yes.
That was the way it was done. And now it's being left up
Yes.
to the consumer to do all the work, and the salespeople just to take the money.
Yeah.
Instead of actually selling. Selling is not something that's bad.
Right.
Selling is something that's good with a proper salesperson that knows their product.
Right. It's an informational.
Right. It's
Right.
very important role.
Yeah.
One of the things that has gone away in our sellers market is seller paid closing costs. We don't see it that much anymore. I mean, if at all.
I haven't seen it even once this year.
Yeah. So the buyer, a lot more is asked of them. They have to put a little more skin in the game in this market to be competitive. If any buyer were to ask for seller paid closing costs, they would automatically go down to the lowest rung of the multiple offers. And the significance of earnest money has gone by the wayside, and it's all about due diligence money. There's some ridiculous dollar amounts that people are having to put up because that's guaranteed to the seller. It's non-refundable, and it shows intent by the buyer that they're willing to put some skin in the game. Some of the VA buyers might have excellent credit, but not a ton of cash. So we advise them to put down as much due diligence money as they can, and usually to approximate the amount of the closing costs for a loan, which I generally say, 2 3/4 to 3% of the loan amount. And maybe that's not 100% accurate, but I'm just trying to paint a big picture. Is that?
It's close. I, as a lender, always offer to all of my referral sources, I'll calculate estimated closing costs anytime. It's easy for me to do. It doesn't take long.
Right.
But I've never had, with my favorite brokers, you and the other one, I don't have that problem. So whatever you're doing is working.
Right. It's different today in preparing a buyer to be competitive in this market and to put them out there with their best foot forward. And it's stressful.
Very.
Yeah, very stressful because for every home that goes under contract, there are 5 or 6 buyers left on the roadside who still don't have a home. Yeah. And the person that got it is paying, at the top of the market, but they're comparing it to renting, and they still make a decision that they're ahead of the game, which I believe. What do you think is going to happen? And I hate to this is a terrible question to ask because people ask me all the time. Where do you think this is going to go? When is it going to open up? Yeah. I say, I can't predict next week's weather.
Well, my colleagues are extraordinarily smart and forward thinking, and they really believe it will go through the end of this year. Okay. And it will start to taper off when the market slows down, and they do not expect it to continuing into next year. But, it's an ever-changing situation. It's just like interest rates. Everyone wants to know what the rates are going to do. We think we know, but we get surprised regularly.
Yeah, we expect the rest of this year to not change appreciably from where it's been the last 6 months.
Right.
So, Laura, if people want to reach you, they can just call you directly, right?
Yes.
910-850-7194.
Yes.
They can text you. You will call them back, and she will.
I do. I return calls.
And starts conversations with them. And Asia, people can reach you at 719-291-2729.
Yes.
As you are getting your mug dirty in this market with a lot of connections you have and the savvy that you bring to the table, and the ability you have to coach people.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you got to have an perspective.
Right.
Because if you can see the whole playing field, you can offer value. And you absolutely do that. We're going to muddle through the next 6 months and see what happens. And just keep fighting hard, and as you will too. It's always good to have you, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, it's day 1 of the next 6 months.
That's right. Every day is a new day.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Laura Kurtz. This is All Things Moore County. Have a great week.